Hello everybody, welcome back to another exciting edition of How Do I Do This? Today what we're going to be working on is we are going to be putting our axle across our automata box. Okay, so we're going to put the axle bushings, the axle, and the handle on this in this video. You'll need to look at the other videos in order to see the other parts being installed. First thing we need to look at though is we need to double check to make sure all of your parts are stored in your flash drive in your project folder. So make sure those are all there. Make sure that we're going to place those parts from that folder. That way the file links are all going to that folder. Now let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we need to do is we need to have an axle, right? Well, we don't have one of those yet, so we need to start a new part. I didn't give you an axle, so you should be able to start a new part and pretty quickly create an axle. So I'm just going to start a 2D sketch, click on that plane just for fun. I'm going to go with a 2-point rectangle, so that way I'm starting out constrained in the center. And I'm just going to go 1/4 inch in each direction. Type in 0.25, hit the tab button to go to the next box, and we're good. Now I'm going to type E in order to hit the hotkey to extrude this thing. I'm giving you guys all 6-inch pieces of 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch stock material. So extrude at 6 inches. That's the basic axle. However, you will want to have some geometry and some work planes associated with this. So first I'm going to create a mid plane between two planes in order to get a mid plane going down through the center. Okay, I want that middle plane. I'm going to do it again to get a plane that's at a right angle to it. There we go. Now, just looking at it, it looks good. They're perpendicular and going perpendicular to the surface. And now I need an axis. But I need that axis that's at the intersection of two planes. So, pick that plane that we just created, and now picking that plane. And now my axis is right there going down through the center of the thing. Yep. All right. Now, let's go ahead and click File. Save as, making sure that it's in our project folder here, and this is just going to be an axle. Let's see, 1/4. Save. Good enough. Part 2, nope, not anymore. Axle. Alright, so now, going back to our assembly model. I want to place my axle that I just created right there. So I'm going to click it, and I'm going to click either double click it, or you can click it and then click open, and there's my axle. But you see how it's going up and down and the holes are going left to right pretty much. I want to rotate this thing, and I'm going to I think I want to rotate it around the z-axis. Yep. Okay. Now it's placed more in the direction that I'm going to use it. And then you just click the number of times you want to place that thing. So now I've got this axle placed. Next, we need to place our axle bushings. So, come into this and let's see. There we go. Crank bushing 7 millimeters. That's the one. I want to rotate that around the y-axis. That'll be my left one. And then I want to rotate it around the y-axis a couple of more times to get the other side. Okay, so there's my two bushings. Now hit escape to leave that part alone. And now, just so I can get this over with, I'm going to drop my crank in there. And I want to rotate that around the y-axis to have it going in the right orientation. Okay, now, looking at all these things, they all have their work planes going perpendicularly through the thing, and they all have axles or axes of rotation around the point that they would rotate. So the first one I'm going to set, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to constrain this bushing first because, well, that's what I just picked. And I want to do one of these insert constraints because this is a circular part and I want to insert it into that circle. And I want it to be aligned in there. So then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select this circle and I'm going to select that circle. And then I'm going to click apply. And it's going to insert it in there. Okay, now that I have that inserted in there, I want to move this thing around. You see how it's able to spin, but I can't really move it from the box? And you see how the box is moving all around? Okay, that's going to get on my nerves, the box moving around. So looking at my orientation, the correct side is up. I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to ground that. So hovering over it in the screen, over on this side, it actually came up with the bushing. Okay, good. It actually came up with the part that is actually there. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to right click it, and I'm going to click grounded. And now when I turn this thing, the rest of the project doesn't move. Okay, so now I'm going to do that same thing over here. Well, just making sure, yep, that thing cannot move left or right, can't move up or down, but it can rotate. So every time you constrain something, you should test it to make sure that it's actually doing what you think that it should do. So I'm going to do another one of those insert constraints. And I'm going to select that one. And again, that inner hole. And click apply. And now cancel. Okay? Now, looks good to me. I realize that it's spaced out a little bit. That's fine. It won't make that big of a difference. Now I need to get my axis or my axle through there. Okay? I don't necessarily need to try and sit here and stab it through the hole. I'm going to constrain it there. So I need to use first a flush constraint where I'm going to go ahead, maybe it'll be a mate constraint. Yep, mate constraint from this axis of rotation going through the axle to this axis of rotation. You hear that click? That means it took. I can click apply and I can move on. Okay? Now I cannot test this thing with this screen open. If I click on anything here, I'm going to start making other constraints. So if I want to test my axle to make sure it's in the right spot and constrained and doing what I think that it should, I have to close the constraint window. Now, come on. Let's think about it. There we go. Now I want to make it so that way the axle moves with the bushing. So I'm going to do a flush constraint between one of the work planes in the axle and one of the work planes in the bushing. Apply. Okay. Now when I turn this, either the axle over here, I can turn it, and the bushing moves with it. Now I'm going to go ahead and select that this side is the side that I want to be flush. So I'm going to make a flush constraint and make the end of this rod flush with that bushing. Apply. Close that out. And I can still turn this thing. I strongly recommend you check every last constraint because it's easier to just go ahead and test your constraints as you're going than to go back through and diagnose them later. Okay? Now, I want to do the same thing with this bushing because you see how I turn it and it doesn't turn this one? I want to constrain it so that way when you turn the axle, the bushing moves too. So, another one of these delightful flush constraints. Pick a work plane on the bushing, pick a work plane on the axle, click apply. Now let's test that thing. Looks good to me. Okay. We can't drag it left or right anymore. All it will do is rotate just like we want it to. Now we need to put the handle on it. So let's go ahead and make another constraint, this time we're going to constrain the axis of the axle to the axis of the handle. All right, now that looks all right. Click apply. Now I can't move the axle or the handle away from that axle. And if I look straight on the end, I can see that it's correct geometrically. It's just right now it's able to move all the way around. So right now I'm going to go ahead and do a couple more constraints. I'm going to constrain, doing a flush constraint, this work plane of the axle, and I want to lock that to this work plane on, or lock the axle work plane to the handle work plane. Click apply. Now, let's say I didn't want it to be in that orientation. Well, you can flip between these two if you want, and that'll change the orientation of that. But now, cancel that, turn this thing, and it moves the whole assembly that we've got going right now. Now I need to make this outer part flush with the outer edge of that. So we're just going to do another flush constraint here as soon as it opens. All right, that to that. Okay, that looks like it's right. Click apply. Now I'm going to cancel it out to close that window, turn the handle, zoom back a little bit, and boom. I turn the handle, it turns the axle all the way through it. The next video, I'm going to go ahead and constrain one of the sets of cams and follower rods. So stay tuned. Go ahead and move to the next video if you need it. Take care.